Hello and good day, fellow gardeners. Now, we want to do a little voiceover of some clips of our garden and our cooking and different things that we did in our garden throughout the season last year. Now, as the temperatures drop and the leaves begin to fall or already has fallen, it's time to transition our gardens. Now, we want to transition our gardening practices to embrace the beauty and the challenges of the cooler seasons. Now, wherever you are, be it from zone A through Z, or 1 through 8 or 9. So, but we want to embrace this and see what we can do about gardening in the winter. All right. So today we'll talk about how to keep your garden thriving. Now, that's sometimes a tricky thing for people who live in colder areas, but we'll try to get into that. Now, again, we want to talk today about how to keep your garden thriving through fall and winter. Now, all at the same time, we are preparing for spring ahead. Now, let's dive right into it. Now, firstly, we want to talk about fall gardening. Even though it's nearing the end of fall, this season is all about tidying up, planting, and preparing. Here are some key tasks to focus on. Now, some key tasks you want to focus on is number one, if you had a garden beforehand, you want to harvest and preserve. So now that's one of the things that we do throughout the year because we plant multiple times. So we're gardening about throughout the seasons. So now we want to, like I said, jump right into like a tip number one, we would say, is to harvest and preserve your harvest. Okay, so now if you're growing fall crops, like say for instance carrots, kale, Brussels sprouts, and some other hardy green vegetables, now's the time to harvest them. Okay, so now we have in our garden, we have carrots that are actually still growing and some greens, and we have some beets. Now those will actually grow full into the winter and some part of the winter. They're kind of cold hardy. We've been planting these time of vegetables for years, and they do pretty well even in the winter. And sometimes if we have them in pots, we put them in our greenhouse. So now you do, like I said, we want to harvest and preserve. Like if you're growing carrots and like I said, kale and Brussels sprouts, it's time to harvest them. Some vegetables, like say for instance parsnips, even taste sweeter after the first frost. So some vegetation that you harvest in the cold seasons tastes 10 times better after the first frost. Now you talking about the second, third, they will lose its nutrients and flavor. So you want to harvest maybe after at the longest at the first frost. Now, tip number two, we highly suggest, Ray and Raps highly suggest that you plant garlic and onions in fall and early winter. Now, the thing about these plants and these bulbs that you do plant, that they come up and they spring up in early to mid-spring. So if you plant garlic now and you don't see it sprout for quite a bit, they'll sprout. Some of them, depending on what zone you're in and what temperature zone, and what temperatures your levels are dropping at in the evening, they'll still sprout. But don't be discouraged if you don't see your garlic or your onions popping out of the ground when it's like winter or snow on the ground. Now, they will actually, what we call, like lie dormant. And by the time that season, winter ends and spring begins, that garlic and onions, they'll be thriving and they'll be dormant and strong enough to actually grow even better the next season. So we highly suggest to plant garlic and onions. Now, one of the things is that fall is the perfect time to plant garlic, cloves, and onion sets. And a lot of people don't know that they'll over winter and be ready for harvest next summer. So that's a key point. Do not just say, you know what, it's getting cold, let me throw the towel in and let's just focus on a garden for the next spring or when it gets warmer. No, get out there if you can and plant some garlic, onions, clove sets, all of those things in the ground now, because by the time spring, late spring, middle of spring, summer comes, you'll already have that. So that's a good thing to do. So you be prepared and just have onions year round. I'm telling you, this is one of the things that we do. We have onions year round. Onions, garlic, cloves, anything, chives. Those plants thrive dormant in the winter, and then they pop out like a wildfire inside, once it gets warmer. So take note of that. Now coming in with a third tip for you all. We want to give you a lot of little hints and some kind of like encourage you to try to mulch your garden beds. Now, a lot of people think that, let me rake these leaves out of here and get these things and get the beds all cleared out. And now, so it won't be so much leaves in the garden. No, we do not recommend you rake those leaves out. Now, we do recommend you take them out maybe only to break them up. Now, you want to add a layer of mulch to protect the soil, and it's going to suppress your weeds. Okay, so now if you have mulch, and I'm talking about the clean mulch, from your wood that you cut during the winter, or, like the wood that you cut for the winter, for your winter wood stove or whatnot, or natural cedar mulch, or better yet, if you have leaves in your yard. Now you want to break those leaves up and put a layer in your beds or in your garden area and practically just put them there because they will suppress the weeds. Now, leaves make excellent and free mulch. Now, just chop them up first, like we said before. Chop them up first to help them break down faster. Now, over the months or over the couple of months of winter in late fall or early fall, this mulch in these leaves will break down and neutralize your soil. So not only is it suppressing the weeds, it's neutralizing your soil by breaking down and decomposing and becoming compost. So next season you plant whatever seeds, that ground is heavily composted, so fertile, and it's soft and I would say really like almost like you putting your hand in rice and you're moving all that rice around real easily. That's how your soil will become if you keep your leaves, break them up, your mulch, break them up, keep them on your beds. Do not take those leaves out. Only take them out if you want to crush them up smaller. But generally, we don't crush them up smaller because they break down. Like I said, they break down naturally. So that's tip number 3. I just want to jump right into tip number 4, which is you want to compost and clean up. Now, a lot of people think leaving their old plants in their garden beds or in their garden is a help, but some plants is not a help. Okay, so now you want to clear out any dead or deceased plants. Now, because they carry disease and they can carry a fungus or whatnot, whatever it is, it can carry. You don't want to have that carry on into your next planting season of whatever you plant. Now, you want to clear out any diseased or deceased plants and add healthy plant material, like we were talking about earlier with tip number 3 about the mulch and the leaves. We want to add some healthy plant material to your compost pile. Now, this is going to help reduce pests and diseases in the coming season. Make sure you remove, if you have tomato plants, for example, you have some tomato plants, they're dead, they're gone, no green leaves on them. You want to not waste them. You don't have to particularly waste the dead plant. You can compost them as well. So, but you want to take them out your garden beds in your garden area. You want to take them out, put it in a pile somewhere else. Like, we actually composted our old tomato, like cherry. We had cherry tomatoes, okay, and some beefsteak tomatoes and some San Marzano tomatoes that we planted a lot of in our garden. So this year, what we did is in the prior years, we composted them in a pile right next to our chicken coop. And if you see now, the compost that we put there, actually, we planted dill and some herbs there. But later on in the fall, the tomatoes took off. Now it looks like a big bush and it looks like a trellis. And we'll show you how it looks. But and I'm sure you saw it in some of our other videos. But it is completely, the seeds that we dropped in there or whatever from the prior dead plants, whatever, it thrived a year or two later. So that's tip number 4. So to make sure you compost and clear out any diseased and dead plants, take them out. Now, tip number 5 is another thing that you can do in fall, late fall, in early winter, is that you want to plant some cover crops. Now, cover crops, for example, like clover or even rye, now they're excellent for preventing soil erosion and adding nutrients to your soil. So if you take out some whatever plants you had and they were deceased or diseased or dead, of course, you want to take them out and then plant some cover crops. Now, we planted some clover. We plant that most of the time, and I kid you not, that covers the ground on its own, and that's why we do potentially sometimes a lot get clover in the garden when we do plant our vegetables, when we do plant our other vegetables like spring and summer vegetables, but that's fine. But this is a cover crop. What they do is they help neutralize your soil throughout the late fall and colder winter months. So it's continuously neutralizing it over the months. So you don't even have to do no work. Just plant those cover crops now in early winter and it will neutralize the soil for you. Now we want to go into another topic, which is preparing for winter, which is right around the corner. So now that the fall tasks are underway, if you're in your garden, do the tips that we said prior, let's prepare for winter gardening. This is the fun part, winter gardening. Now, tip number 1 is to actually protect perennials. Now, we want to protect our perennials if we have any. Now, you want to add a thick layer of mulch or leaves around the base of perennials to protect their roots from freezing temperatures. Say, for example, if you have a perennial, if you have flowers, if you have certain flowers that are perennials, like maybe roses, and some other perennials. Any plant that is a perennial, you want to protect their roots. Now, what we do is we typically put a little bit more dirt around our trees, like our apple trees and fruits and vegetables, some of the perennial fruit and vegetables. And we'll just put a little bit more dirt, and then the leaves that fall from the trees. I have so many leaves around our house, but we use those leaves and we just protect the root area. It's not a lot of work. You could put some mulch, get some organic mulch and put that around your trees or perennials, and that will actually do the job as well. Now, a second tip we want to go over is if you're in, say for instance, a milder climate. You can actually grow in winter cold hardy vegetables, like, for example, some spinach. Of course, that's one of the cold hardy vegetables. Swiss chard and winter lettuces. Use row covers. Now, you want to use some row covers if you have some, or clutches to extend your growing season. So what we mean by that is to use row covers, like some people get like this clear plastic, or this is a actually particular type of material you can cover your plants in your rows with. and that protects them from too much cold. Like we said, if you're in a warmer climate during the winter, it doesn't get freezing temperatures below 30 degrees or I would say 40 degrees or whatever. You can use those things. If you don't have a greenhouse or use hydroponics, you can get row covers to protect your Swiss chard or spinach. So that's another tip to get, is to grow in winter cold hardy vegetables if you're in a warmer climate, or if you have a greenhouse, or if you can get those row covers. Another great tip for preparing for gardening or preparing for your winter or late fall gardening is set up bird feeders. Now, I know you sometimes see, I'm not sure if some people see big bird nests and I would say bird houses near people's houses. And what these birds do, they can be a great pest controller come spring. Now, you want to keep them around by setting up feeders and water sources during winter. So you want to set up some bird houses, or just real pretty. And not to mention, it adds another thing to your garden, is the fact that birds are beautiful. Okay, birds are beautiful, the sound of them and all that. They are excellent pests. If you have bugs or anything crawling around your garden that are pesky and you can't get rid of, bird houses is a must, especially if you do organic gardening. Now, jumping to another tip is that you want to keep your tools maintained. A lot of people don't think of these things, but before storing your gardening tools, because a lot of people just throw them in the shed, it's over with in winter. But you want to store them, but you want to clean them first. Clean them, sharpen, and oil your tools. This will prevent rust and keep them ready for spring. So if you don't want to keep on getting tools every single season, this is what you do. All right, so now another tip as well. I know I'm saying keep on saying tip, but we want to give a lot of people tips so they can know that these are main focus points to focus on when you are trying to keep your garden going. Now, you want to plan for next year. Winter is a perfect time to review this year's successes and challenges you face prior or throughout the year prior to winter. Now, you want to sketch out your garden plans and order seeds early. If you don't have a seed vault, you want to order your seeds early to avoid the spring rush. Because a lot of the times when people do get seeds during spring and summer, they can't find them. Like, a lot of the times, if you don't save your seeds or you don't have heirloom seeds, they will have a hard time finding, for example, corn. Corn is one of the major seeds that go out during those summer months. It's like hard to find. Sometimes it's watermelon. Sometimes it's certain different types of melons. These seeds are a little bit hard to come by if you get it last minute. I will order now. I will order my seeds now, organic seeds, if you don't save your harvested seeds. We have a tendency, of course, to recycle our seeds. If we have our green peppers, we have our cucumbers, we have our pumpkins, thousands of seeds. It was no reason for us to really go out there and buy. They just continuously, we had some of our seeds, for example, we had our pumpkin seeds for maybe at least we recycled them after our plants. We harvested them. We had it for dinner. We sold it or whatnot. We saved our watermelon seeds and our pumpkin seeds. These are very easy seeds to save. But again, please prepare for next season's planting by ordering your seeds now. Now, I actually want to give some bonus tips, all right, for those who can't bear to stop gardening even in the winter. I'm talking for myself, of course, and my sister, but now we want to give you some gardening ideas for indoor. For those of you who cannot bear to stop gardening, here are a few indoor gardening ideas to keep your green thumb active. Now, number one, we will want you to grow herbs. Number one thing is people do is grow your herbs indoor. Now we have some herbs outside that's been growing years since, I've saved for 10, 15 years growing back, and they're extremely hardy and acclimated to our zone 7A winters. So they come back like with a vengeance the next years. But anyway, now you want to grow your herbs indoors. Now what you want to do is you want to grow things like basil, mint, parsley. They do wonderfully on a sunny windowsill. Now, if you don't have a sunny windowsill, we recommend just put them underneath a light. They don't need a lot of heat, a whole bunch of heat. Underneath a small little light or on your kitchen table or in your windowsill, they'll do pretty good. So now that's for indoor. Now, number 2 is you want to grow microgreens. Some microgreens are actually healthier than the actual adult plants, like say, for instance, broccoli. Microgreens and broccoli is a lot healthier than the actual adult plant. Even though the adult plant is still healthy, microgreens is another indoor plant that you can do if you don't do hydroponics. Now, some people have hydroponics and they have it in their sheds or in their stores. Like we have one that we grow lettuce. Okay, so microgreens is another thing that you can grow indoor. Now, these nutrient-packed greens grow quickly and are perfect for salads and garnishes. In your cold winter months when you want to have that good salad, let's grow some microgreens. Now, if you have some indoor plants, like house plants, you want to take care of them as well. In the wintertime, you want to start off by giving your houseplants some love by dusting them off, dusting the leaves off, check for pests, and make sure they're getting enough light as daylight hours shorten. So if you have houseplants in your house, like I said about the light earlier with the microgreens and certain, like the herbs, you want to make sure to have a little bit of light. Just give them some love. Dust off the leaves. If they seem to fall off, that's okay too, because sometimes the temperature change can kind of cause that to happen in some houseplants. But don't worry. And even if you want to put some clean mulch around the plants to protect the roots, you can do that as well. But dust off the leaves. Make sure they have adequate light, and your houseplant should thrive, inshallah. Okay, so now that wraps up our fall and winter gardening talk. Remember, everyone, every season offers a unique opportunity to connect with nature and prepare for the next gardening adventure. Whether you're growing garlic, tending to your indoor gardens, or simply planning for your spring gardening, enjoy the process. That's one thing about gardening, is that you want to enjoy it. It's enjoyable, it's therapeutic, and it can be fun and easy. It's not always hard. Especially when you get your hands in that dirt, you'll start feeling how. And then eating your harvest is the best thing. When you can go outside and say, you know what, I need some seasonings. Go get some thyme from your garden. Go get some mint from your garden to make a cup of nice warm tea for the winter. You'll love it. Now, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share your gardening questions or tips in the comments below. Happy gardening, and see you next time. Inshallah.